able to get your attention, I'd really like to welcome you all, Butch's colleagues and friends. This is a party that he actually organised himself several years ago, and he's thrown us all a party. He's told us that we're not allowed to do anything religious. All right, you all do religious things, he'll come and haunt you. Yes, welcome everybody to Butch's wake party. And I do have only two messages. I've got two messages to read out. And so the first is from Kevin Baxendale, who is in the UK, and he was one of Butch's camera assistants. So I'll read you out that. And then secondly, I don't know, all of you probably would have heard of maybe Julian Pettifer, who he worked with quite closely at the BBC for many years, and they did a lot of the war footage in Vietnam, and together they were both known as Butch Calderwood and the Sundance Kid, because they took projects that everybody refused to do. So without further ado, I'll read out Kevin's message. Okay. The great Neville Butch Calderwood was truly a legend and a totally unique friend to me and so many others. He absolutely hated being called Neville, by the way. I first met him on a green standby when GR asked me how long would it take for me to be ready for an overnight trip. As I lived just 50 yards from the front gate, I was on my way to the airport to meet Butch and Ian Sansom within a few minutes. And that overnight ended up being 6 weeks in Portugal, South Africa and Mozambique, and I'll never forget it. We were then together for 2 years, and he taught me so much. For several months he lived with my wife and I in our spare bedroom, and after he moved from Caversham, and whilst he was buying his cottage in Haven Lane, I was the one to suggest he name his cottage Seaview. And when we were brainstorming that problem, they decided to choose that one because it was a very characteristic name that would suit Butch. Because it was so far from a sea view, it was nowhere near a sea view, so that's why he chose that particular name for the cottage. And yeah, he loved it, and he loved to be different, and so generous with his thoughts. And he was also a man of very few words. My wife has a couple of 100 postcards he sent every place he visited, all with just greetings from wherever and BC with a kiss. So I'm sure there'll be several of us in this room that have received a couple of Butch's cards with only BC and a very, very short message. So moving on for Julian.
Hello, my name is Julian Pettifer, and I'm talking to you from my kitchen here in London. Why am I talking to you? Well, it's because I've just realised, slightly to my horror, that I've been working, or I started work, 56 years ago in broadcasting, both in television and in radio.
So he said here, I am so sorry I cannot be with you, even virtually. I'm waiting to go into hospital for a cataract operation and at present can hardly even manage this iPad. But at least I can send you this heartfelt message. Here goes. The day I joined the BBC in 1962, one of the very first people I met was Butch, and from the very start we clicked. We became not only workmates but great friends. For decades, until he returned home, we travelled the world together, covering every kind of story, happy ones and very sad ones. My most vivid memories inevitably are of the Vietnam War. Butch was by miles the best war photographer I ever worked with. Together we managed to get some amazing footage. Since we were obliged to work in very small teams, I was also porter and sound man as well as reporter. Butch was creative, inventive, and above all, courageous. He is also outstandingly good at making friends with the multinational allies, except for the Americans. He did not much care for the GIs, but made good friends with the Vietnamese, Koreans, and the Kiwis. And apart from his professional excellence, the great thing about Butch was the friendship and the humour he offered when we stopped work. My most precious memories are of hilarious evenings in bars and restaurants. He loved his food and his wine. In Saigon, Bangkok, Seoul, or some little dump in the bush. God bless my dear Butch. You are greatly missed. I only wish I was there among all your friends to bid farewell. This cheers goes out to absent friends and to Mr. Butch Calderwood. To Butch. Cheers. All right, and now you must go on and party. If there's anyone who wants to share anything later on, of course, please come up. Okay.
G'day, I'm Marcus. I knew Butch when I started working at 7 in the early 80s. We worked on news and 11 a.m, which was a magazine show. Butch was the guy that you'd go to when you were shooting film, because we were balanced between film and video at those years, and it was nice because he had that wealth of knowledge that any question was easily answered. You'd come in with how do we do this, and he knew. And the stories from England, the stories from his adventures in the war zones was something that you could grab onto and sort of really understand of what a cameraman was like and what was expected of you.
My name's Ben Allen, and I met Butch by doing the one-week course that he and Ted Raymond were teaching for people who transitioned from shooting tape to shooting film. I did that in, I think, 1996 or 97, and became great friends with Butch over the course of that week, and we were friends ever since. He had many UK stories. In fact, I learnt so much from Butch, and so much about shooting and lighting and a different way of looking at the world, that a few years later I was working with sound recorders who'd just come back from working in the UK for 10 years, and was shooting a TV film in Tasmania with him, and he said, I can't work it out. You light and shoot like an older English cinematographer. And I said, there's a reason for that, and that was Butch. It was teaching me that way of looking at the world, and something I really cherish and I use all the time. I think one of the great things about Butch was that he was a natural storyteller, and whether that was telling stories over lunch or with a camera, he was very good at communicating great meaning and investing the story or the pictures with an incredible amount of depth.
Okay, Ray, I can see the red lights rolling, and this is very intimidating, I can tell you. Now, do I have to stare at the lens the whole time? Am I allowed to do that? Yeah, okay. My name's Roger Buckingham. I was a news cameraman at Channel 7. I started there in 1974 and worked my way up through the ranks, and then Butch turned up. We were just trying to remember when, early 80s, I would say, and really changed the place. He was really experienced and really influential, and really helped everyone, I think, improve their game, I thought. And it's one of the characters that you remember, which I think, is very special. And over the years, I've seen him at ACS and that, and we've had long talks and that, and he's a good guy. Thanks, Butch, and I'm honoured to be here. It's fantastic.
Butch has just been instrumental in my career, and I just can't thank his impact on my career and on cinematographers all around the country and all around the planet.
My name's David Childs. I was a camera assistant at Channel 7. I was probably one of the last camera assistants to be taught by Butch.
What was he like?
Butch was fantastic. Butch was, I remember going out, the first thing I ever shot was I was with Butch, and we were at Balmain doing a court story, and the person we wanted to get went out the back door, and Butch looked at me, and I had my sound kit and everything ready, and he goes, "Remember all those camera tests I taught you?" And I said, "Yeah." And he said, "Oh, I'm on blood pressure pills, I can't run." He said, "Take the camera, go for it." So I ran down and got a shot, and then Butch, went through every little moment with me afterwards. And in my career of 26 years so far, there's not a day I don't think about what Butch taught me when I first started.
Look at us fly, open your eyes, open wide and say, Channel 7, all the best.
Yes, my name's Belinda Wardell, and I'm now an accredited cinematographer. I was the 6th woman in Australia to get accreditation, and it was Butch who introduced me to the ACS many decades ago, but it was also Butch who taught me how to transition from shooting video to shooting film. And then he became a friend and a mentor to me.
Yeah, look, I'm Ted Raymond. I'm a past president of the ACS. I've been involved with Australian Cinematographer magazine since its inception, when Craig Pickersgill basically set it up. And I'd known Butch for a long time. I knew Butch when he was working at Channel 7 in Sydney. But I guess my real involvement with Butch came much later, and off the top of my head I don't remember which year it was now, but it was in the early 90s. And the great thing about Butch was that he shared everything. He shared everything he knew he was happy to share with other people. I learned a lot from Butch. I learned a hell of a lot from Butch. So it's a toast to Butch, right? It's definitely a toast to Butch, yes, it certainly is. I mean, there's so many of us, from old guys like me to a lot of the younger guys around, that are indebted to Butch for so many things. Not just from the imparted knowledge that Butch gave you, but as a friend. He was just one of those people that you couldn't have a better friend.
In terms of my own relationship with Butch, the thing that struck me about Butch was that he was a very kind person who took the trouble to actually give people advice and to mentor so many people. And I know that he has done so for so many people in the room here. I have in my pocket, and I've showed to a few people, pictures of Butch and I in Central Africa in 1985. And of course he'd already been to all these places where we were, Chad, Burkina Faso, Congo. And so he had local knowledge which he could impart to us all. And I'll never forget a couple of things about Butch. One, that he was extremely good in a crisis. Yeah? He never ever lost his head. And I can appreciate those stories about Butch in Vietnam, that Julian Pettifer saying that he was the best guy to have on your side in a crisis. I'm very, very grateful to Rosemary for having contacted me and to learn that I was on the list of invitees today, because Butch will always be with me. I've got these, and no one's ever going to take them away from me. And it was a really amazing trip. I mean, to be in Central Africa in the middle of a famine in '85 and a war in Chad, which we went to as well, was a priceless experience for us. Valet Butch, I hope you enjoy the big newsroom in the sky, and you deserve a special place up there. Thank you.
Thank you.
And one of the things that really always fascinated me about Butch was you could say to Butch, it's 5:35 on the, the 29th of May. Where were you at this time in 1952 or 62 or whatever year you might like to drag out of your head? And Butch would say, oh, just a minute, and he'd walk over and he had a bookcase full of diaries. And he'd get out the 1962 one and he'd go through and he'd say, I was on the bus from Wapping to whatever in London at that time. Oh, look, and there's the bus ticket. And this was literally what the man was like. He was so meticulous in keeping records of everything. And I hope those diaries get well preserved and are never lost.
Well, I guess I met Butch just like most other people in the camera department at Channel 7. I heard about the legend when he used to work at Channel 9, and then finally got to meet him. I went to my first war with Butch at the Gulf War, and was forever grateful of his guidance and his history of just knowing what to do, what to be in the right place. I remember we got pulled over by a set of truck drivers with batons and guns and were about to kill us, and Butch's quick thinking, he grabs out a passport and shows the kangaroo on the front of the passport. And it's just those little things that no one can teach you that just comes across, and you think, wow, that's just amazing. You probably saved our lives, all of our lives that day, just from a simple thing of just grabbing out a picture of a kangaroo on a passport, and made friends with those Iraqis who were just about to kill us.
I just got one story to tell of Butch, which was, as a camera assistant driving the car, he didn't like bad driving. And he used to put an apple on the dashboard. And if the apple fell off the dashboard, you were in trouble. So you had to drive carefully with the apple. And the dashboards are all like sloping too. But there's apple on the dashboard all the way, wherever you were going, and if it fell off, that was it, you're out of the car. And I'm pretty sure I made the apple fall off many times, but I never got thrown out of the car. Yeah, I remember drinking. I also didn't drink red wine until I met Butch. And I learned to drink red wine, which is another really important thing in life. So I became a better driver, and I learned to drink red wine.
And one of the stories was during the Vietnam War. And there's a story about how a tripod was set up in the delta somewhere, swampy, boggy, and out of the corner of his eye he saw what appeared to be like a small water buffalo or an ox pulling itself out of the mud. So he swung the camera around and set the iris exposure and the focus, and then he pulled his head away and he realised that it wasn't an animal, that it was a young woman and her child, absolutely covered in mud, pulling themselves out of the shore after hiding from the Viet Cong. Now, the interview stopped then because as I raised it, Butch burst into tears. So this man who was unflappable was taken down by this memory, and he must have had so many memories like that. I made the complete journalistic mistake by I kept talking to try and pull him out of it, to try and get him to have a conversation again, but of course, you know, the best journalist would have just left it until he gathered himself, so you have that moment of drama on screen with the tears. But I would hope that amongst all the great stories that we have of Butch, that we still remember him as having a great sensitivity as well, knowing that although he saw so many things and so many difficult things, and he seemed so strong through all of that, that it actually did affect him at a truly human level. And I think, although I never had the opportunity to work with him as a camera operator or to be in the same room with him when he was doing a shoot, my memory of him will be that he was this great human being that saw so many great things and was affected by them as any human being would. Thanks everyone.